When I finally decided I was going to turn a chess set, it's just like it can be a rabbit hole. You start researching. I'll hold off some of that commentary.
With myself, I'm going to, I've been threatening to do it for a long time. My dad was a serious player, and he had a beautiful big Staunton set that he loved, and my brother got it, and then his nephew got it, his son got it, and I haven't seen it since.
Yeah. The problem about those big Staunton sets, the kind you'd use in a tournament, is they dominate a room if you leave it out. You got to have a really large room.
Yeah.
Because they are big.
Yeah, but my dad would never play with anything else because.
My sets are scaled down a little bit to more reasonable play for typical people in a typical room, even if you leave them out.
Well, we can talk to all of that today. Let me.
Oh
see.
Yeah, design is very important to the process.
So, do you play as well, Mike?
Not really. I got into it a little bit. I got my granddaughters interested in it. I thought that was one of my motivations turning a chess set, and both of them have learned to play. One of them played as an after-school program for a year and got a trophy, and that was kind of exciting for both of us. I learned to play as a kid, played with my brother, played with my dad a little bit, but I'm not very good, and it's not something I engage in much. If it hadn't been for turning these chess sets, I don't know if I'd ever touched a chess set again.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't play anymore. I used to play with my dad and my brother, and my kids when they were little. I used chess to teach them how to take turns. I didn't care what they did with the pieces.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I like it for my granddaughters because I believe it helps their critical thinking.
I agree with you.
Yeah, there's been some studies that show that chess. I don't know how much of it's anecdotal, how much it's scientific, but it seems like that people get on the chess team, their grades improve in school, they have better concentration. Just does a lot of good things for them.
I would believe that.
For some of them, it raise their self-image.
Well, I played in high school, and then I played in college, which was a military college, and so it was a way to get off campus and meet girls.
I think you were pretty good at it, Ernie.
Well, I had a 1645 rating, which is okay, but it's nothing to write home about.
It is something to write home about. Since most people start out with a rating of 100 and never get a whole lot better. I like the lore surrounding chess anyway, the stories and the histories and the setting times over the centuries in different countries, which Darlow is really nice. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Lancaster Area Woodturners Weekly Coffee Hour number 58, continuous in a row since the COVID lockdown began. I thought we might have a smaller than usual crowd today on account of the beautiful weather and all that, but it looks like the screen's filling up pretty nicely. I see we have a couple of new faces on here today. Who is 2020 down there? Is that Ted?
Yeah, I'm about to change that. Sorry about that.
And who's Sandy?
Sandy is Jeff Mullen. I'm about to rename him too.
Okay. Some of you are new guys. Welcome aboard. Program today, I would like to ask you all to briefly familiarize yourself with the tabs under the reactions tab. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see an icon that says reactions. And if you click on that, the main thing you get there that matters to us is raise hand. We've begun to learn how to talk over each other and jump in to say stuff in silences, but I wanted to start to use raise hand. If you click raise hand, I'll tell you what happens. The hand goes up on your screen like mine just did, and your picture moves to the upper left of my screen. So that means I know you've raised your hand, and I will get around to calling on you. So if you're dying to talk, and you don't want to, you feel rude jumping in a silent moment, do your raise hand and we'll get around to you. And then to take your raised hand down, or you could just click on the hand itself and you get the power hand.
I don't see it. What tab is that under?
Under reactions.
Okay.
screen, second tab from the right. Tab on the right. Not
Can I try it, John?
Go for it.
everybody wants to try it. You want to try it just to see if you can. I don't mean to make everybody do it. I just mean to introduce the concept and let it slowly. There you go. Lots of raised hands.
Oh, cool.
See how that works? And then
Yeah, that's neat. Thanks.
then I can click it. I can lower the hand after you've talked, or you can lower the hand. And
Oh, there.
okay, today we
Just wanted to tell you, John, how nice this coffee hour has been. Thanks.
we're going to have rather than go around the screen today, we've got a special presentation from our good friend Mike Peace on making chess sets. And the reason we're going to do that today is the June challenge for the Lancaster Club is a collaborative chess set. And I'm not sure if any guys are working on that right now or not, but I thought it would be at least helpful if we had a good presentation from a good woodturner who's been making chess sets. They're a wonder to behold. And with that said, I think I'm going to hand it over to Mike. You there, Mike?
I am. Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite topics. This is a new demo topic I introduced by request early last year, right before COVID, and then it's been very popular. And part of the popularity comes from, I think, a Netflix series that kicked in last, I think, October, called The Queen's Gambit. If you haven't seen it, it's only got about six episodes, but very attractive redhead that makes chess a little more interesting. I think the key thing I've got several things to talk about, and this is a rabbit hole for me. Once I got interested in making chess sets, I kind of went all in terms of research. There's several references I'll leave with you. One is if you go to Pinterest and you go to my Mike Peace Woodturning, you'll find a particular board on chess sets where I started pinning all the results of my research. Another reference is an article I had published in American Woodturner last February, and then I've got a playlist on my YouTube channel, all of Mike Peace Woodturning, on making a chess set that's fairly detailed. The first consideration is what kind of wood you're going to use, and you can use lots of different woods. Some of the woods that I've used during demos, it's these various pieces. Let me change the camera here, and it might be able to show you a little bit better. Okay. Just for demo pieces, Osage Orange, very hard wood. It violates one of the guidelines of you don't want highly figured wood because it's distracting. The idea of making a chess set is not necessarily to make a work of art, but to make a piece you can play with. So the guidelines for tournaments is they can't be shiny. All the pieces should be easily recognized. So you don't want to get too fancy with highly figured wood. But Osage Orange is very hard. I don't think I'd make a light piece out of it because it's light now, but it's going to turn very dark. Cherry is a little soft to my liking. I've done real well with Bradford Pear. The one thing you got to be careful about Bradford Pear, it's very hard, very dense, takes detail beautifully. The problem is it can be very brittle when it's dry. So little features like finials and crowns and those kind of details, castellations on a rook can chip if you drop them on the floor. Here's one sample piece I did out of mesquite. It shines up real well. It seems kind of coarse, but it cuts beautifully and just shines real well, even though they're not supposed to be shiny. Persimmon is a really good wood because of the coloration in it. I think when you dye it, such as this piece right here, you have those little darker flecks showing. That gives it a nice feature. And you don't have to always use dark woods. You can dye them, you can paint them. The Russians play a lot, and I think they're cheaper sets. They're almost all painted. The first when it comes to making these things, there's lots of ways you can hold them. Obviously, you can just turn them between centers and part off on each end, but there are some challenges with that on getting the detail done on the end. I like to mount it where it turns independently on the headstock and does not require tailstock support, so I can finish off details on the end. And the way that I found that works best for that is to make a threaded mandrel. And that's simply just one of your spindle scraps that you can mount back in a chuck. And then you've got a couple of different steps and you put a screw through it. It's a bit of a challenge getting the screw centered, but it doesn't have to be perfect. If it's off a little bit, it won't make any difference because it's going to be centered based on this little step. So you normally have to mount these off the lathe because they're pretty snug. And one of the beauty of this chucking technique is, number one, it holds it firmly, it registers it real well, but it also, you use a 3/4 inch hole which matches the size of a penny, and you can put 4 pennies in there and just give your pieces a little more elegance before you seal the bottom and put a piece of felt on it. So that's why I like this system. So you just kind of twist it on. Oh, I drill this hole on the lathe, and then I come in with a hand drill like this. And because I've already got a dimple down at the bottom for my Forstner bit, it makes it easy to find it. And then you just go up in there about a 1/2 inch, and that makes it, and you got an appropriate screw size, to match your screw, hole size match your screw. So then I just kind of twist that on, and then I wind up having to use my, if I can find it, screwdriver. Just hold the piece together, tighten it up a little bit from the back, mount it on your chuck, and you can have lots of these, and they're handy to have lots of them when you finish because you can use them to speed up your finishing process. You can spray something on one, set it aside, stick up another one, and go to town. The other thing that's I think people have to keep in mind, and this is one of the most important considerations I think, is when you are making a chess set, you have to match it to a chessboard because the two come together. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Well, I'll just talk about it. We'll look at a few pictures here in a moment. But the guidelines for tournament chess sets is there are of a certain size that generally fit on a board with about a 2 1/4 inch square. The Federation guidelines in the U.S. And the international are similar, but basically they're looking for a king that's somewhere 3 3/4 to 4 1/2 inches tall. The base of it should not cover more than about 75% of the square. The diameter of the base, you can look this stuff up, but I just want to give you some idea of it is important that you don't scale your pieces so large that they don't fit a chessboard, or they're too small for a chessboard, especially if you've already got a chessboard. The sets that I generally turn something about 75 to 80% scale of the tournament size because it makes it a little easier. I can make a smaller board. The boards that I make are 1 3/4 inches, so it's at least 4 inches smaller in each direction than a tournament board. So if you leave it up in a room, it just doesn't completely dominate the room like a large tournament chess set, if that's a consideration. The other thing, besides those scales, which are a real important threshold issue, it's the idea of, well, what kind of chess set are you going to make? And let me just show you, just run through a few examples here. Here's a standard Staunton set that we're all familiar with. You can see the pieces are all scaled from largest on the left, the king, and then they come down in priority based on the priority of the piece. And you can see the bishop and the knight are somewhat similar in size because they have somewhat similar, I guess, I forget what they call them, weights in terms of effectiveness or strength in play. But there are so many different chess designs. Here's one's a German set.
Mike, I notice in all these, something Darlow points out is that what makes a set unified is the base. They all have the same base.
Exactly. That's an important consideration because that does tend to tie them together. Now, the king and the queen sometimes they will have a larger diameter, and therefore features on like beads might be a little larger, but they're going to have that same unifying design. This is a German design during the 1936 National tournament played in Germany, very Germanic, and it wound up becoming somewhat political because it kind of matched the design theme that Hitler had, so it's kind of associated with the Nazi regime. But it's a very simple set. You may or may not think it's attractive, but you look at the features, there aren't any real much in the way of beads or any fancy doodads. Pretty fast and easy to make. Here's another simple set. And this is called the Berliner. I kind of like this one. These are all two pieces, so you got the bottom piece and then the larger piece fits into a hole that's pinned in it. But you can see how simple that is. And a lot of people are concerned about, well, I can't carve one of those knights. Last time I'd carved was when I was a Boy Scout making nectar slides. But you can see here, you cut these things out on a scroll saw. If it matches your design, it's not really an issue. This is an Italian set called Fabiani. I just like that. And it just shows you how stylistic you can get. But the pieces are all easily identifiable. But they don't have some of the common features that we'd see in a chess set.
I love that one. That's a beauty.
That's a beauty. The knight is just so elegant. This is one I modeled my first chess set after. Very modern design, but it had some characteristics I didn't like, so I changed it because it's like, you make a chess set, make it the way you want. I didn't like the way that you really could not easily distinguish the pawn from the bishop because they both had that cylinder on it, the bishop being the one in the middle. So I changed that. I didn't like the idea of the queen not having some type of ornamentation, so I put a ball on it. And let's see if there's my set. This is the one that we modeled for the article, although that was a challenge because they took a scale model drawing that one of my viewers in Australia had done for me after I turned the chess set, and it was all in metric, and the editor gave the design to somebody to convert to imperial, and then they had me keep checking the design and sending it back, and I couldn't make any changes in less than 1/8 of an inch. So it wound up being a horse designed by a committee that looked like a camel. But you can see I used a kind of more of a traditional bishop and cut a slot down the middle as opposed to cutting it from the side because I thought that would be easier. And this is Bradford Pear. We have a lot of Bradford Pear here. It's just a beautiful wood to work with. There's an interesting design.
Yes.
This is the second set I made, or the one I modeled after. I really like this. This is a Russian design, and I really like the Russian designs. They're just so, they just seem to be very attractive. And I really love the bishop on this one, no miter on it. It looks like one of those onion domes from the Kremlin. The other thing about it, that if you'll notice the rook, instead of having regular castellations which are cut into it, which frankly they are a challenge. They were a challenge for me to do on my first set. What they did was put a tiny little notch, and then they simply used a small rasp, similar to this one that I picked up at a garage sale. It almost looks like it's a chainsaw file, but I think it's coarser than that, so I think it's a rasp, but heck, it might be some kind of chainsaw file. But then you just make those castellations with this thing, and it's just super simple.
Let's pause right here and just see if there's questions in the room. I know that Doug had his hand up. Doug, you got a question?
Well, yeah, I had just a quick question. You went by that bishop rather quickly and making the cuts. Do you do the cutting on a bandsaw before you do the turning or after you do the turning?
That's an excellent question. And the first time I did it, I figured it was easier to cut them I cut an X on the top on a table saw. The challenge is you have to center that X that you're going to cut on with the saw. And I just had a little jig that held it, diagonal, not square, but, kind of diagonally. It's got to be centered on the hole that you're going to drill. So that presents a little bit of a challenge. Holding it on a table saw is a little bit of a challenge. So I did that for the first set. After that, I'll go, since you asked that question, I'm going to go ahead and show you an approach that I used.
I'm going to continue to interrupt you from time to time for more questions.
Sure.
Your hand. So
that's this little jig I made. It's just got a large bolt. Here's an example, a large bolt with a cheap Penn State adapter that my chuck would fit on. and then I could use it. Here I'm doing the castellations on a chess box, a rook box, but you can use this for and I flipped it up on its side to do a little bit of cleanup work. Let me stop that there.
On my iPad.
Alan Miller's got a question. Alan?
Yeah.
Sure. That picture you have up there right now, your work on the knight, that's primarily hand carved then?
It started off being hand carved. Now that this is my second set, the first set didn't require any carving. This one required some carving. Now this is not my picture. Let me go to see if I can find mine. And there's mine. I used a simpler design for the knight that I cut on the scroll saw, and it took very little carving. But I used a little sharp carving knife. And it wasn't that difficult, and I drilled holes for the nose and a little. I made something. I think I might have used the arbor on a Dremel tool to make that eye. I can't remember. But what I found, I was getting ready for a demonstration with a club. I found that I had something even better. Let me reach for it. Let me show you. Bear with me here. Okay. Turns out I had this texturing tool that I made that's knockoff of a decorating elf, and it uses Dremel burr. So I bought this Dremel burr. As I'm getting ready for one of these club demonstrations on turning a chess set, it dawned on me, hey, this Dremel burr is high-speed steel and it's designed for carving. And I also had two other different shaped burrs, including a cylinder burr. And I thought, well, this thing's designed for carving with a Dremel tool, so I'll put it in my rotary tool, and lo and behold, it just made things a lot easier. Now, here's the approach that I use when I do that carving. I make a flat stick that I cut out the rough shape on a scroll saw, and I make it long enough so I can hold on to it and manipulate it. It just makes it easy. I can sit down or stand up the lathe, but it's easy to manipulate that thing. And then you can do some cleanup work with a sharp knife if you like. And then you turn around. I didn't cut this one out. Here's a chest that I'm working on. This is maple, but the same concept. You got something, you finish one, you can then turn around and finish the other.
So you're following the old cabinet maker's rule. If you want to make little pieces, you make them on the edge of big pieces and cut them off at the end.
Exactly. So again, this is a Russian design, and one of the things that I like about it is, again, as John pointed out, the unifying base doesn't even have beads on it. It's just a tiny little V groove, which makes it simple. And if you notice on the rook, there are no beads. It's just a couple of V grooves on the tower. And then it's got that lovely bishop, which I really like, which did not require cutting a miter slot. And then the feature on the king and the queen, these contrasting colors that you take the top from the other piece, I just thought was just very elegant.
So what's your time investment to make all 32 pieces in a set?
Oh, I guess if you really stuck at it, it might take you a week, but maybe not. A lot of that depends on how fast you turn and what your approach is. What I found that if you're doing, for example, what I would recommend to people is start with the, my picture of it. I would start with the pawns because you got to do 16 of them. And by doing that, you get that repetition. You learn which tool is the best fit for you. You really work on getting those uniform features. Then it makes it easier to transition to the more complex ones. If you don't have a lot of time to do it at one time, as many turners don't because they have other honeydew projects or they might still be working for a living, then one day you could get in there and cut blanks and just have all your blanks ready. Another day you could go in there and drill all the holes. And then another day you could go in there and turn 2 or 3 pawns.
So you would do it that way. You would approach it by cutting all the stuff that do it like the same operation, drilling on all the pieces at once, rather than make one piece at a time.
That's the way I would recommend. At least drill all the holes for that particular piece that you're going to turn, whether it's 4 queens. And I say 4 queens because a chess set, normally you've got 2 in play, but you know, if you get your pawn all the way to the other end, you can turn it into a queen. Most of the nicer sets come with an extra queen, so there's 4 queens, only two kings. I would at least drill for all those pieces, so then when you go to turning, you don't have to stop your turning and go back to drilling. I use a set of pin jaws, but any small set of jaws that'll hold the piece, you know, square will work fine. You could drill them on a drill press. I just find it easier to hold it and faster on the lathe, especially with that small hole using the hand drill. That drilling operation goes very, very fast. But
Got his hand up. You got a question, Ken?
Yeah, hi, Mike. My name's Ken Vasca from Nittany Valley Woodturners.
Yeah.
I was wondering how important is color variation and figure variation when you're making the sets?
Well, obviously, if you're doing any hand carving on the knight, the more figured it is, the more difficult you know your carving gets, because generally you're going to have a very hard wood. You know, a lot of that depends on your personal taste. I find it easier to turn small pieces if they're not figured, because you're less likely to run into that changing grain pattern, which could be difficult on turning smaller pieces. If you're dyeing it, like I mentioned, the persimmon dark set and that Russian set that I made, I like the color of the wood because it had all these dark flecks. Here's I don't know if you can see the dark flecks. Got all these little dark flecks in it, which it just seemed to work real well when you put a dye on it that doesn't completely make it opaque. You can see the flecks through it, so it gives it sort of a mottled, marbling kind of look. But here's an example of one. I think I can probably do better. Osage Orange, which got you know, very heavy grain pattern in it, which you know is probably not an issue, because Osage Orange is so hard, it wouldn't be an issue in turning it. And if it wouldn't be distracting, because in short order, this thing is going to oxidize and turn very dark, and you're not going to be able to see the pattern. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Ernie, you got a question? You're muted, Ernie.
Excuse me, I had to unmute myself. I have 2 comments. One is another great wood that's pretty available and turns about like boxwood is dogwood. And this is a mallet made out of dogwood, and you can see it has almost no grain pattern, and it's very heavy, so it's nice and fairly available. The other thing is, you mentioned a set that is connected with the Nazis, and I don't believe that's so. John, you correct me, but that looks more like Bauhaus.
It is Bauhaus, but it came about in the early 30s, and then the Nazis wiped out the Bauhaus school, but they did like that design. If you do some research on it, you'll find that it was adopted for the Olympics under Hitler, and that all the chess clubs in Germany were encouraged to switch to that design during the Nazi era.
Yeah,
but you are correct. It is a Bauhaus design.
Yep, but Gropius and the boys at the Bauhaus were no friends of Hitler, I can tell you.
No, he closed that, shut down that school. Yeah, good point. See, finish. We talked about weights. I've got a couple of short video clips. I like to put felt on mine, and here's an easy way to felt it. You get a little strip of felt that when you fold it, it'll make about 6 or 8 of these things, and then you have a flat spindle scrap that you got chucked up, and then you make a small turned disc about the size of your felt. That's the one I got my fingers on, and you just center that on there. Bring up your tailstock live center.
Awesome.
And then you could use, I think in this example, I can't remember what tool I use. I start off using a skew thinking that would be the easiest. But what I found when I did this a few times, the detail tool worked the very best. You know, a shallow, very shallow fluted spindle gouge seemed to be able to get in there more easily because you had less steel and you could get up to that disc, you know, a little more easily than you could with a skew. But either one of them will work fine. You'll wind up with these scraps and you got to stop and clean off the scraps and then go back and finish it up.
That's a great technique.
I also use this. A friend of mine needed a piece of plexiglass for a odometer or something on a car he was refinishing, and I put a piece of plexiglass and did the same thing.
That's a brilliant technique.
Neat.
It's hard to cut these things out perfectly round with a pair of scissors.
Very. I see another question over there. Ted Luttrell?
Yeah, I had a question. When you were talking about types of wood to use, my son and I have been talking about building a chess set. He's the carver, I'm the turner, so that'll work out. But he had mentioned bird's eye maple. Is there an issue in turning something as hard as bird's eye maple?
No, the hardness is not an issue. Again, it depends on whether that figure causes you any problems in turning. But otherwise, yeah, bird's eye maple would be beautiful. I think it'd be very nice. I've turned one or two pieces, as Ernie suggested, out of dogwood. Dogwood would probably be preferable to Bradford Pear because it's a little more resilient. If you drop it, it's less likely to break. But it's got the same kind of characteristics of tight grain, very hard. You need a stick for the size pieces that I'm making. You need a stick for I think one side somewhere around 4 to 5 feet long, and somewhat less than 2 inches, maybe an inch and a half, depending on the size of your pieces. Probably an inch and a half square to get you. Exotic woods get very expensive, so that's why I would look at some type of domestic wood. And you want it dry, of course, because it's going to move on you. If it's green, you can turn it fine, but when you drill that hole and put pennies in there, as it shrinks, it's possible that it could crack. That would probably be my biggest concern. I guess if you had a larger hole, might not be a big issue. You might be able to turn them green.
Yeah, we got some nice blocks of bird's eye. The reason I asked the question is I've had trouble planing it. You have to sand it because sometimes when you plane it, they pop out.
Yeah.
That's good.
Ernie could probably address this better than me because I've never turned bird's eye maple, but I suspect that you'd have better luck with wood turning tools than you would with a planer.
That sounds good.
Mike, you mentioned about the idea. I think I heard you say about a dowel or round piece. I have some small pieces of Japanese yew that has, it's a really nice double color on it. So it's when you get down into a small branch, you get a nice dark center with a white outside. Does a double color like that on the piece distract from your chess set more than it adds to it?
All I can say is what the guidelines are for tournament play. They probably wouldn't allow that. But if you have it available and you like it, not a problem. And I think especially so if you made your darker pieces very dark, where it's clear which ones are light and which ones were dark. I don't think it would be an issue.
Ted, you still got a question?
For home play. And few of us are going to be playing chess in a tournament.
You still have a question, Ted?
No, sorry.
Yeah, we're learning about this raise hand thing. Okay, we derailed.
Right.
You. Back. Go.
Let me go back to.
I'd love to see a piece turned.
Let me. Let me show you this real quick. This video clip. This is the process I use on my first set, where a very simple night where I put the pattern. And I didn't talk about storyboards, but storyboards is very important. So you glue this on all 4 sides, or 2 sides, the front profile and the side profile. It's real important that they get squared up with the hole that you drilled. I mean, that's really important. It's getting squared up. And I'm not much of a scroll sawer. I can't remember whether I took out some of the really laughable parts here, but you scroll saw the outline of this, and this is a one-piece night. and you do both sides. And then I wind up coming back and retaping it on one side, so I've got a flat, so I can turn it 90 degrees to get the other profile set. That's what I'm doing here, putting a little tape on it. Fast forward. And then you get the other profile. And then this already got the hole drilled. And then you put it back on the lathe and turn the base round, and the top parts of the knight are slightly round. And then you can see the stuff dancing around. Then about the only thing you got to do is worry about the eye, if you want to do the eyes. So basically you got a really rough blank that you put on the lathe for that really simple design. But I like the chess pieces that are the knights that are 2 pieces. And we'll look at those, I think, in here in just a second. This is a pretty short clip. This will be over here shortly. And fast forward, I think, on it.
Oh, that's lovely.
There we go. Yeah, here's a little, I was drilling a hole with a center bit into a piece of steel so I could drill these eyes. It had, I don't know, there's different ways of doing it. A little tiny Forstner bit probably worked just fine. Here's where I was cutting the ones where I was doing the carving, where I was making it a 2-piece knight, which is very common if you look at a lot of these knights, especially I think the Russian ones. They tend to have a lot of them that are 2-piece, where they've got the head that's got you drill a hole in it that's centered. And here's my hand carving before I discovered using the carving bits. Well, let's stop that there. And let's see. That's most of the stuff I want to cover. I could show you my finishing technique. I've got a little short video on that.
Please do.
I may just, put a bunch of screws or nails in a piece of flat board, so I could just kind of stick these on there while I'm drying. I use trans tent dye on the set. I just painted them on, and then just stuck them on those screws to hold. Here's me doing the other set, doing the same thing using a dye. And then I put it on a mandrel, and I'm putting on a coat of, in this case, shellac to seal this, and at a very low speed. And it was a fast operation. You can see I had lots of these rough spindle scraps, and you don't even have to tighten the thing up, just on there enough to hold it while you're turning it. And then put a final finish on it. In this case, I can't remember. I think I put a couple of coats of lacquer on it. No, I just used carnauba wax on that first set, and I think that's probably something to mention. Traditionally, carnauba wax was the finish. I found that maybe it was my application technique. I've used the Beal buff system a lot, but I haven't really concentrated on putting a lot of carnauba wax on there. But the pieces all became fairly dull looking in use, which I guess probably was fine in terms of tournament play or the Confederation's view, in that you don't want a really shiny piece. But I like shiny on chess pieces. Normally I don't, but on chess pieces, I found lacquer worked the best for me, and that's what I put on that Russian set.
I would do like the Dale Nish method: dilute your brushing lacquer and burnish it right on the lathe.
Yeah, that's another option, and that's probably faster and easier than trying to hold it on a Beal buff system. I've got, let's see, nope, that's not it. Bear with me here. I've got an interesting picture here. Let me find it. Oh, I'll just continue to go through some of these other designs. Here's a fairly simple design, which I kind of like.
I see Jim Bowman has a question. Was that before he goes through further designs, Jim?
Yeah, it's probably a question for the end. I wanted to know how many guys in the club actually play chess, or do we just enjoy making chess sets?
When we get back to gallery view, we'll put that question to everybody.
Here's the technique I used for the top of the king, and this is just an example of how I do the same thing on the little Christmas tree ornaments, where you cut the profile and then you flatten it out, and then you can really see the effect of it. And that's the same technique that I'm using here. If I can get to it. Well, oh yeah. I digress for just a second. We're going to switch over to chessboards. These pictures not in order. This is a decorating approach you can use with photography called Zentangle, and that was what I used for my first chessboard. There's more chess sets.
Hold it.
I think I can get
Back there. You had some.
I think I can
Go back. Go
back
a little. Yeah, the one before that. The one before there was a beauty in there just before there.
That's a Russian set.
That's a gorgeous set. So is this.
Oh, that one.
One before
or that one.
That one. That's a beauty.
Yeah, that's a Russian design. I like that. You can see the knight is very simple, and it's a two-piece knight where you just turn the base with a little peg on it to fit in the hole. And it's got the same, a lot of the Russian designs, you'll notice most of the Russian designs don't use crosses. A lot of these were made during the Soviet era. So they typically have a flame and a ball for the queen, flame for the king. Bishops change quite a bit. There's an interesting design. Again, two-piece on the knight that didn't require any carving. I'm trying to find my chessboard. Bear with me here. Well, thought it was in there in this picture set. But I used Zentangle to make my first board. The board was made out of a 1/4 inch. There it is. And there's the book. If anyone wants to get into Zentangle, it's just a method of doodling. This is the best book, one Zentangle a day. But you can see, instead of doing it the traditional way, I just used some 1/4 inch birch plywood used for drawer bottoms, and laid out a pattern or grid, and then used the different decorating Zentangle techniques, which, you know, for me, I thought was easier and kind of interesting. And then I used a little cherry with a beveled edge and a slot to, you know, that's mitered to fit around the corners. There's the full example of it.
That's where the pyrography in, yeah?
That's pyrography, yeah.
Have you made boards where you do inlay, or, you know, actually walnut?
I did. I thought I had that picture in here, but apparently when I copied it, it didn't pull it in here. If you bear with me a second, I might be able to show you the one I did. If I can figure out how to get it in there. You know, I think it's going to be a challenge for me to find that thing and get it in the picture. I thought it was in this set, but it's not. I did make one, and instead of inlay, actually you glue up strips of alternating colors, and then you cut it in the other direction, and then you slide every other one down one color, if that makes sense. If you're doing veneering, you might cut up all the little squares, but if you're making out of solid wood, the easiest way is to cut uniform strips. Like I said, these are 1 3/4 inch squares. So you cut your strips 1 3/4 inches, light, dark, and then turn it 90 degrees and cut them again at 1 3/4, and then just slide them one color so you've got them alternating.
So you would have the squares would be face grain, not end grain.
Face grain, yeah. You could do it in grain, but if you do that, then you are cutting individual pieces, and that seems like an awful lot of work to me to try to do an inlay like that. But, you know, if you like the in grain pattern, there's some reason, you know, people do make them that way.
I was thinking you just mill square sticks by running them through your planer both directions so that they were square, and then saw them off. Glue a light one and a dark one together and saw them off and match them up.
Yeah, you can do that. Some people do. I don't know. I'm not a really skilled flat worker. Ernie probably got more insight into some of that than I do. And also, when you do make a chessboard, you'll probably either want to make a design where you put the pieces in it, which to me was too complicated, and then you had to make a little compartment in the drawer for each piece to go in so that they wouldn't rattle around and bust up if you're moving it. I found it easier to just make a storage box. So I made a storage box. One of them I put pornography on it. The other one I used some spalted wood and did a book match on the top with contrasting mahogany sides. It looked very nice. That's the picture I can't seem to figure out how to get up. Actually, if I do a share screen, I might be able to do that. Let me get the piece up first.
Yeah, right. I have the spotlight on you right now, so the share screen will hold, and then the spotlight will take.
Well, so it may take too long for me. Yeah.
The best book on this is Mike Darlow's book on chess sets, and his new book of Turning Projects has a large chess section in it, which is an expansion of some of the things he learned since the original chess set book. So there's a lot.
I guess the one thing I would caution, I have that book and I've used it. The one thing I'd caution before you buy it, do know that it's got 6 chapters, and the book is called Making Chess Sets, I think, but only 1 chapter is devoted to making chess sets. The rest of it is all about the esoteric, about the history of chess, and a lot of other interesting information that doesn't directly bear on making a chess set.
That's true. I happen to like the lore of chess. It's very interesting, you know, if you go.
Oh, it is, no question about it. I'm getting there. Because there was another picture on here that I think you'd find very interesting. Rudy Osolnik turned to chess set and wrote an article for, I forgot the name of the magazine. I'm trying to find it here. And I just discovered this recently as I was continuing down the rabbit hole. Well, darn. Y'all talk about something else for a second. And
why do we remove the spotlight, John, and answer Jim Bowman's question here?
Exactly that. I'm going to go to gallery view. Now I see everybody. So how many here do play chess? Or ever have, or like... Okay, I see about half the screen. How many here would make a chess set anyhow? I mean, how many of you guys are actually interested in making a set? I know I am. It's about the same half of y'all. Kind of interesting.
All right, let's see if I can share screen.
I don't need to spotlight you for that.
So while you're sharing screen, Mike, I have a question. Are there skills that you learn making chess set that you've applied to other projects?
I think not so much for me because I've done so much stuff, but I'd say one of the things that it again focuses the spotlight on the importance of alternate methods of chucking.
Now your first screen was up here. Oh, there you go. This is from the original old American woodworker, and I imagine David Sloan could give us a PDF of this to send out.
Are you seeing this set? I'm not seeing it. I don't think I've got it up on the screen.
I'm seeing Turning a Chess by.
Oh, okay, it's interesting. I don't see it on mine. Yeah, this is an article he wrote, and the couple of things I want to point out, and this is just the first page, and that's all we're going to see. In his method, he wanted to make these things where they were affordable, and you know, he was always selling stuff to, you know, put his kids through college. He used scrapers, and that's the method for most of the commercial ones that you buy that come out of India. They use the very hard wood, and they have these specialized scrapers, and almost all of it is scraped. And that works on very, very hard, dense wood if you know what you're doing. And that's the approach he used. And in this article, he's describing, if you look at the light area on this picture, it shows the profile of the scraper that he's using. And he said you only need 6 aluminum oxide wheels to make these scrapers. So I would say you'd have to make a lot of chess sets to make that worthwhile to compete with India.
I don't see anything on there that you couldn't turn with a little wee sharp spindle gouge.
Yeah, there's not anything. Now the design that I liked on here I found interesting was it's the knight. It's got the hole drilled through it with a slot. I thought at first that might be the bishop, but that's the knight. And the other part that was different here, he's got a kind of an unusual. That might be the bishop.
I think it's the bishop in the.
I looked at these things and I can't remember, but in his design, the point I want to make out, his bishop was not as tall, I don't think, as some of the other pieces. It didn't fall in that right descending order,
we can see
it didn't fit within the design parameters that are recommended for chess sets.
We can see the bishop in the picture.
I think it was taller than the queen.
The one you're showing, we can see the bishop at the far left. Yeah. It's got a hole through the side and a slot in the side of it, but it still reads as a bishop.
I think that's the bishop, yeah, because the knight I think is over on the other side, right. And it's that funny looking off. He used a multi-axis or turned it round and then changed the axis to do that funny shape. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Now let me see if I can figure out how to get to the picture. I was going to show you on the board that I made.
While he's looking, anybody else got questions or comments you want to make?
I made a chessboard for my son, and I used the strip method. And one of the guys at Harrisburg had made a chessboard using the squares. And when he came to putting in the last couple of squares, they didn't fit. You got to remember that you're going across, a dozen squares and a couple thousandths on each one. You run out of space pretty quick.
Yeah, 75% is a general rule. The base of the king should not, the diameter shouldn't be more than 75% of the width of the square. Okay, I finally was able to get to this piece. I think I'll be able to show you my chess set. All right, are you seeing that?
Got it.
Yep.
It's not showing up on my screen, but that's the box I made.
Nice box.
And when I made this recently. When I made the chessboard and I made the box, and I was fairly happy with the results. But when it was over, what it reminded me of is why I like wood turning. Fast, easy, instant gratification. It wasn't any of this bandsaw, jointer, planer, table saw, router, sander. Just a lot of sequential operations with a lot of equipment, and I'm ready to get rid of my jointer and planer because I need the room. But this set I'm making, I decided I'm doing this demo often enough that I needed to just pick one set that, and instead of doing different pieces of wood, different sizes, stick to one particular design. So I picked out a Baku 1961, which is the chess set they used in Baku, which is, I think, the capital of Azerbaijan on the Caspian Sea for a 1961 chess tournament. And so I'm slowly making my way. Now, they're not as uniform because I'm turning one or two in a demo and then 2 months later doing it again. But I do use storyboards, and that's the key: is find a set you like, scale it on Windows, and then print it out and make your storyboards.
Are you doing those with scrapers or gouges or what?
I do everything with gouges. Sometimes I use a negative rake scraper, especially on the top of a rook, or if I'm doing or I'm doing on that very first design where it was real important to have the pieces. Let's see if I can. where you've got two planes coming together and meeting at a corner, it was easier to use a skew as a negative rake scraper to try to get those two angles to fit properly. But generally, I use spindle gouge.
Yeah. Ernie, you got any comment on all this? Yep, so I think he's gone away. How about you, Kyle?
I'm here.
Okay.
I really have been enthralled with this, and I hope Mike would maybe give us a bulleted list of some of the caveats he's found for making a chess set, like the 75% rule and so on. There's no sense of us all doing the same work twice.
I cover actually all that in my videos, Ernie. My first chess set I made a series of about 6 videos. Each one was on a separate piece, and it was not that it took a whole video to show how to turn one piece, but each one I did one piece, and then I took one aspect of some of the things I talked about. How you do how you chuck it and drill the holes for a screw mandrel. Another one might be on finishing. Another one might include a little section on doing the weights, even pouring lead weights. Another one included the felt. So I took one of these side issues, but I talk a little bit about design in a couple of them. So I'd say watch that playlist, and then you get more detail than I was able to show here.
I'll put a link to that in the chat in the follow-up tomorrow.
I'd like a comment on your felt for the base of your pieces. That technique is also good for making felt for the base of a bowl if you want to, so it doesn't scratch tables and stuff like that. So it's a really neat solution.
Yeah.
I bet I could use that to cut round labels out of sticky back vinyl as well.
Oh yeah. I've done that.
It doesn't crack plexiglass if you do it that way?
Well, it depends on the tool you use. I think I probably used a sharp, thin parting tool. Yep. And it'll cut right through that acrylic without any problem.
Carbide, their pointed diamond point one would probably do a good job too.
I can't say. I don't use it a lot, but I would say before you go that route, watch the video that I put out Sunday. And it was dealing with using carbide tools, and it was called something like Carbide versus Corian, a misadventure in wood turning. So that kind of gives you a hint of where that thing was going with carbide.
I want to check with Kai and see. Kai, have you any experience down this track or any comments you'd like to make?
Yeah.
You're muted.
Yeah. No, sorry, I haven't turned any chess sets yet because I'm not a chess player and I never felt tempted to do one. And we have no chess players in the family or friends who play chess, so I haven't done any. Sorry.
And that's a good point you raised. That was one of the things I think that probably kept me from turning a chess set for a long time. It's like, yeah, it'd be kind of fun, but what would I do with it? And then when my granddaughters came along, and I thought it would be a good idea, a good activity to do with them, and that motivated me, and it turns out it was. Every now and then I can still get, they're both young, one's 10, one's 13. I can still get them occasionally to play a game of chess. My wife keeps telling me, you need to let them win. And it's like, no, they're going to have to beat me. And when they beat me, they'll know they beat me.
Yeah. I'm playing with my grandkids 7 and 10 twice a week. And the same principle. I don't let them win, but they keep getting better. And it's good time for us to do it together. We do it on Zoom, obviously.
Absolutely. It's great to hear.
My dad bought me a rook, and I don't think I beat him more than once or twice in his life.
For me, I played my dad all the time until I won once, and then he quit playing.
That's what happened to me when I was a teenager. My brother and I played a lot. And when I got tired of being beat by him, I quit. So I haven't played since I've been a teenager.
I played with my brother on a cruise a couple of years ago, and it was a fairly fast game, and he beat me, and it's like, whoa, and he doesn't play much chess. anymore like me. And then so I said, okay, let's do a rematch. And then I really paid attention to what I was doing, and I beat him. But because he's an older brother, you never know for sure, you know, whether he's throwing it or not, whether he let me win or I really won.
Now, how about checker sets? Any comment on that, Mike?
Yeah, I tried to make a checker set. It turns out there is a complexity to a checker set that you wouldn't think about. Can anybody think about what that is? Okay, when you king a checker and you got to put one on top of the other.
Oh yeah, of course.
They've got to fit. You got to have some kind of recess. And I thought, you know, that is way too much work for me to do a recess on the bottom of all these little checkers, and then put a little elevated tenon on the top.
I would think you could drill that recess with a Forstner bit, maybe, or cut them all and then use that as your chucking recess and catch it in a pin chuck. You
probably could. You know, give it a try, John, and report back.
You've got another comment, Ernie?
Yes, in playing with your grandkids and so on, a really good accessory to buy for a chess set is a time clock, which is really 2 clocks that you can touch buttons. You saw it in Queen's Gambit. All tournament chess is played that way. But in practice, many chess clubs play what is called guillotine. And you both start out with a set time, 5 to 10 minutes usually, because you're trying to make people remember moves. And just remembering sequences of moves will make you a lot better at chess. But at any rate, you start out with, say, 10 minutes. And then when somebody loses, the winner has to knock a minute off their time. So they'd have 9 minutes to play the other person who has 10. And this automatically handicaps the better player, just like it was golf. And it makes it a lot more fun for the people that are learning.
Good idea.
I have my one story on chess. I lived in Siberia for a year and was out at the beach in the summer with my family. And the Russians like playing chess. You know, they're all over the place with chess. So I sat down with this one guy and played chess, and I beat him on the first game. Well, that was like a national insult for an American to be. They challenged me to a rematch, and there's 5 Russian guys discussing in Russian, which I didn't understand what move to make next, and they slaughtered me. I was just like,
that's called kibitz.
Yeah.
Did they give you vodka to even the odds?
No.
On that note, everybody, you've whiled away another perfectly good hour, as the Car Talk guys used to say, with the Lancaster Woodturners Coffee Hour. I want to thank you a lot, Mike. I found that all very and the rest of you for sticking with it, whether you're interested in chess or not. And, of course, we'll be back next week.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
So long. Yep. Thank you.
Everybody. See you next week, John.
See you next week.
Bye.
Good to see you back,
Very
John.
enjoyable.
All right, thank you.
See you, Doug.
See you later, guys.